o'clock.
Lead Story Prime this evening on this Tuesday, 100 plus days into the second coming of Donald Trump. And the world's media has been doing a lot of work reviewing what has happened in that time, tracking the number of promises kept against the number made, and of course looking at the effect on the Trump policies. Rather a difficult thing to keep track of, given that the man changes his mind seemingly by the minute. But we are doing a part of that work here on the show this evening, especially looking at what Trump 2.0 means for the Caribbean and has meant so far in this, his second stint at office. Also in the show today, we're going to look at what happened in Trinidad and Tobago on Monday. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, at 73 years old, the first woman to be inaugurated as Prime Minister in the Trinidad Republic, is also the second woman to be inaugurated as a Prime Minister in TNT after leading the UNC to a crushing win. Poor old PNM, they even lost the 2 seats on the tiny island of Tobago. All that to come over the next hour or so. So stay with me for the ride. Welcome back to Lead Stories. So it's a case of the P's, power, politics, and policies. And yeah, Donald Trump 2.0. We've been watching it play out frame by frame from our vantage. And one thing it isn't is boring, this Donald Trump 2.0. So what really has happened in the second coming of Trump? 100 plus days into the second, people say reign, because they're saying that it's monarchical how he is leading the most powerful office in all of world politics.
From retaking the Oval Office to now wrecking it and the US? Well, that might be too strong of a criticism for the two-term, self-professed Making America Great Again President Donald Trump. So you be the judge. Shockwaves were sent through American politics and the globe when the 45th president became the 47th. You see, the thing is, after a dramatic and contentious election in 2024, Trump's victory stunned the nation. With record-high voter turnout, the former president successfully overcame an initially fragmented Republican field, ultimately defeating his Democratic rival Kamala Harris in a race that many had written off as a foregone conclusion. Since regaining the presidency, Trump has wasted no time in enacting sweeping changes, revamping his administration, and reigniting the political firestorm that characterized his first term. Here's a look at some of the key developments in Trump 2.0. 1. Economic nationalism and America First policies. Trump has doubled down on his America First mantra, ushering in a wave of economic nationalism. In an effort to revive U.S. manufacturing, the administration has enacted a series of tariffs on foreign goods, particularly from China. The move has been hailed as a victory for American workers, though economists warn that the long-term impact could be inflationary, especially on consumer goods. The stock market has fluctuated as a result of these bold policies, with some sectors seeing growth, while others, particularly in technology and retail, feel the strain of rising tariffs. 2. Foreign policy shifts and a renewed focus on China. On the global stage, Trump has not strayed far from his original foreign policy playbook. His administration has re-engaged in a trade war with China, accusing Beijing of currency manipulation and intellectual property theft. The Biden-era approach to China has been quickly reversed, and Trump's hardline rhetoric has been paired with sanctions against Chinese firms and a more confrontational stance on issues like Taiwan and the South China Sea. Trump has also sought to bolster military spending, promising to restore the U.S. military to its full strength after what he deemed a period of neglect under Biden. This renewed focus on military might, along with calls for NATO members to increase their defense spending, has once again put Trump at odds with traditional allies. 3. Reshaping the judiciary. Another hallmark of Trump 2.0 has been his reshaping of the federal judiciary, following his earlier success in confirming 3 conservative Supreme Court justices. Trump has pushed to expand the lower federal courts with a slew of conservative appointees. His choices have led to significant shifts in the interpretation of key issues such as voting rights, abortion access, and environmental regulations. 4. The culture wars heat up. Trump 2.0 is also marked by an even fiercer culture war, with the president launching public attacks on critical race theory, LGBTQ+ rights, and progressive education policies. He has signed a series of executive orders aimed at curbing what he calls left-wing indoctrination in schools and the workplace. His administration has taken action against corporations and institutions perceived to be too politically correct, with numerous high-profile figures in business and academia coming under scrutiny. Trump's recent remarks at rallies and speeches suggest that he sees this period as part of a longer struggle to reshape America in his image, positioning himself as the leader of a movement that transcends the presidency itself. 5. The road ahead, a nation divided. As Trump 2.0 continues to unfold, the political landscape remains deeply divided. His supporters see a president who is finally fulfilling the promises of his first term and taking bold action to make America great again. His detractors, however, fear that his return will only deepen the rifts within the nation, further eroding trust in democratic institutions and exacerbating political polarization. We discuss on Lead Story. Angela Melville for Lead Story Prime.
Thank you, Angela. And so 100 plus days in and 142 executive orders later, here we are with President Donald J. Trump. You can see on the graphic behind me the table showing the tariff structure, because remember, Trump has been fixated on 2 words since his return to the White House. He says tariffs is the most beautiful word in the dictionary, and he also has a thing for the word groceries, yeah? And his mindset is that tariffs will make things cheaper for the Americans, will make Americans richer, and of course, among the things that will be more affordable for Americans is groceries. That's his perspective. Now, you would recall that the movement on tariffs would have perked up the ears of many leaders in the Caribbean region, many sector leaders as well, not just the leaders of states. And there was much consternation when he threatened to do what the calculation didn't support, but what has been branded as reciprocal tariffs. Nevertheless, he's changed his mind on tariffs repeatedly. What we had originally threatened was, say, for instance, a country like Guyana had a 38% tariff threatened originally when he first held that press conference where he came with a table showing the reciprocal tariff rate for each country. Now he has resided to this position for now, where he says, look, it's a flat rate for everybody except China. So 10% everybody will face, including Jamaica right at the top there. And the difficulty for importers, as you will hear, is that with many goods, not that many goods are coming out of the United States directly into Jamaica, but there are many goods or component parts of finished goods that are coming from other countries through the United States, and of course the tariff tailwind will attach itself to that, and that's where the expense comes in. So this is pretty much what has happened for the Caribbean and what is happening for major players in CARICOM, where tariffs and the new Trump administration is concerned. 10% is the rate that has to be paid. So locally in Jamaica, what have some sector leaders been saying? We've heard elsewhere from the Shipping Association of Jamaica president, who says that yes, they're beginning to feel the impact of what happened with port fees and the tariffs by extension. So what does the president of the private sector organization of Jamaica, the most powerful private sector lobby, has to say? We're talking about Metro Siaga.
The slowdown in business due to the possible policies that have been implemented. And I say possible policies because things are changing every day. in the U.S. So truth is, we don't know where everything is going to land, and hope that at the end of the day, when everything plays out, that Jamaica is no worse off than we were before, and actually in a better position, because other countries will have a higher tariff than us. And that's the feedback is that people are watching and waiting to see exactly where we land. In terms of the trade war being have possible opportunities, yes. Many of our members are seeing the possibility of Jamaica really getting to the place that it needs to be as a logistics-centered economy, and having our products being manufactured and added value here and being exported to the U.S. So yes, I think there are some good opportunities, and I think people recognize that. So we're watching, waiting to see what happens, and doing so whilst maintaining our businesses all the time.
As Oliver Samuel said many years ago, looking and waiting like Bob Marley seems to be the stance being adopted by business leaders here in Jamaica. But as I noted, the president of the Shipping Association of Jamaica, she says that her members are already seeing the effects of this Trump tariff regime as unpredictable, as in flux as it really is. First break here on Lead Story Prime, well, the second break here on Lead Story Prime. Back with more after these.
If you truly don't have faith in me, then I promise you it's over. I'm going to put an end to this nonsense once and for all.
I will not rest until that girl is dead. I'm still going to kill her tonight, no matter what.
Here is your court notice.
Who's the letter from?
Sagar just sent me a notice to get Krishna's custody.
Ganga.
Brought to you by
Hyundai or Hyundai.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Come rise with Sunrise. It's your midweek push. We start your day with Wednesday service, then it's all about Mentorship Day 2025. We'll head to the shelves in Sunrise Book Club, and the fun wraps up in WAGs. Brought to you by TruePets. You've never seen a sunrise quite like this.
Welcome back to Lead Story Prime here on CVM TV. So I will turn to my panel of experts to discuss the effects of Trump 2.0 so far, and especially as it relates to the Caribbean and what the policies have meant for the way business is done, the way governance has been conducted, if the impact has been tangible at all. And of course, look to what we can expect beyond this point, now that we've seen the form of the first 100 days. You know that we have a straight line and a good relationship with the leading academics, and among that group of people who we can rightly call leading academics, Dr. Maziki Thames, she's in studio with me. Thank you for making the journey.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're more than welcome. And online, on Zoom, we're supposed to have two guests. Oh, I see my good friend Siku Clark, attorney at law. And I'm not making, well, I'm sure Siku is here. I'm not sure, am I seeing my other guest? I am seeing Siku Clark. I'm not seeing my other guest. That's well, I have two attorneys on, two eminent immigration attorneys. Opal Lee, of course, you know her if you listen to media in Jamaica. She's a household name here. And also, of course, Siku Clark is building his reputation by the day. Right, Opal and Siku, good evening. You're online. I'm seeing both of you. Welcome back to Lead Story. You've been here before.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you very much. All right.
And thank you again for having me.
You're most welcome. I start with you.
Thank you.
You've had the benefit of seeing close and being able to study the effect of Trump 2.0, 100 days in. Has it been deleterious? Has it caused the Caribbean to be unsteady? Has the impact been negligible to date, you would say?
I wouldn't say that we have felt the full effect as yet in the English-speaking Caribbean. But I want to give a context in relation to the beginning, the introduction, just to say that there was no record voter turnout in this case. In fact, looking back at the figures, there is a more narrow gap than originally thought between Kamala Harris and Trump. There was no reversal of policy on China. There is actually continuity insofar as the U.S. has been in trade war with China. They have been concerned about China in particular because the U.S. is concerned about its future as an imperial state, its empire, so to speak, and that it's responding to the threat. The tariff approach that Trump is taking is meant to buttress America, and in particular American manufacturing. So he imagines that it will make America better off. Whether that will play out is very much in question. In relation to the Caribbean, we should be concerned because the U.S. is, of course, interested in China's interest in the Caribbean and the world at large, but in the Caribbean and Latin America. So there's a way that we will have to, navigate those waters very carefully as small island states, not tremendously powerful in the world, but certainly the U.S., their eye is on China in particular. The immigration question, of course, is very important. You have, guests here to speak on immigration. We haven't seen that threat materialize significantly in the Caribbean, though we are seeing, obviously, the deportations, or we shouldn't call them deportations, the disappearances of Latin Americans into El Salvador. We have not experienced that, and we are not sure how it will go, but we have to think about the long view of Americans, the idea of the MAGA base, and how they imagine the United States in the future. And they are thinking not just quote-unquote illegal or undocumented people. They're also thinking about legal migrants because there's a way that they imagine America. The attacks on the universities are attached to that. It's not progressive education. It's all education. Any possibility of opposition to Trump is what is being targeted. And one of my concerns is that the Trump administration can very likely set the tone of governance for all of us. When we see what Trump can get away with, what he's doing is testing the separation of powers. And we are seeing that there seems to be a willingness to, contest with the judiciary and to simply just, do as he pleases, what we'd call executive overreach, right?
Extensive context you've set there. Well, let me pick you up on something before I bring in the two attorneys. The issue of the trade war between China and the United States, and as you correctly point out, it's not a new policy on China that he's adopted. The Biden administration had its own issues with China, and they weren't the best of friends public facing. But here's the thing. If we consider the US and China to be the elephants who they speak about when they say when elephants play, the grass gets trampled, and I know, people may not be comfortable with it, but places like the Caribbean, are we really the grass? Is there a bigger game at play? And perhaps it is that consequentially something may happen here, but there's no focus on making life difficult for us here. It's all about China, that Belt and Road Initiative, and the hegemonic battle between themselves and the US. Would you say that that is characteristic of what is happening?
There's a bigger game at play, and we are vulnerable to whatever happens in the global economy. One of the concerns with Trump is that he is breaking the order. So the neoliberal order that said liberalize everything, free trade is the way, etc., and that people came to understand that this was the way that we would do economics. Now, historically, we too would have had problems with free trade and liberalization, and we would have been concerned, especially as small island states, about protecting local industry, etc. We didn't win that battle. I'm not sure we even fought it, but so the idea of the global economic order is what is uncertain right now, in the sense that Trump's move to put in place tariffs can actually shift the global economy away from the neoliberal order, the order that says free trade is best. And it's not clear how that will play out, but everything that we took for granted, and I'm not saying that their order was in any way ideal for us, but everything that we took for granted in the post-1945 global economy, international governance structure is in question in relation to how the U.S. is positioning itself. So if you look at its relationship with NATO, with Europe, it's saying these are not necessarily our allies anymore. If you look at how it's behaving in relation to Canada, these were long-term stable relationships and they governed the world. But it's saying we're going to find new friends. They might be in the Arab world. They might be Russia, but we're not playing the same game. And it's not clear how that game will play out for us.
Hear you on that. Openly, I come to you for your perspective. When people thought that the Trump return was very real, there were many horror feelings about what his return would mean for immigrants in the United States, especially those of Jamaican heritage, given what he has said about immigration and his plan when or if he returned to office. Since he's been back, he has said a lot about immigration, a whole lot about immigration. Illegal migrants worried, people who are there legitimately worried, people holding student visas worried. Has the fear equated to the reality for immigrants in the United States since Trump's second coming in the White House?
Absolutely. I think everybody believed that Trump did a 360. From day one, I've been stating the same thing, that when he campaigned for the office, he basically said that he was going to do a big one on immigration, right? He said once he came in, everybody is going to be out. If you're undocumented, he wants you out. But what happened is that some people believe they were safe because they did not have any criminal record, for example. They believe because they had something going on in process that they were safe, but the reality is different. This is not what's happening. What we as immigration practitioners are seeing is that even the act of trying to legalize your status is under attack as well. And so what we see is that the people who are even caught up in the net of the removal net even include those with simple overstays, even those that don't have any criminal record. A simple, for example, I have clients who were just basically a passenger in a vehicle, and ICE targeted the vehicle, and because they were at the wrong place, I want to say the wrong place at the wrong time, they were asked to show their documentation. Even though they weren't driving the vehicle, they were also caught up, and guess what? They were arrested. Usually, nobody would have expected that. They thought, only, I'm safe. I'm going to have my family members, vote for Trump because we don't do any criminal, we don't have any criminal record. We are safe, and we are seeing a total 360. And so right now, nobody is safe. I mean, recently we saw where, even the Navy officer's spouse, right? Everybody would say, they're going into their own house, right? Somebody who's representing or, the spouse who is going for bat for the U.S. Army or for the U.S. Navy. And his spouse was also taken into custody. Of course, that's a different issue because she had some immigration issues, even though it wasn't a criminal record, but she was also caught up. So the bottom line is, nobody is safe. So you're absolutely right. Even in the Jamaican diaspora, everybody's feeling it. I am seeing this with my clients. We're seeing the panic, and it's making our job even more difficult as well.
Siku, Trump 2.0, the fear of his return and what it means for immigration, has that equated to the reality?
Absolutely, 100%. And I'll definitely echo the tones of my colleague, Opal. I definitely believe it is everything that he said it would be and more. What we've seen in Trump 2.0, which when juxtaposed with Trump 1.0, is a more calculated attack on immigration. Now we see the IRS and the Social Security Office now able to share information with immigration, and that's never been done before. So now you have immigrants where their Social Security number, where it can actually go dark. So they're attacking the immigrants from the financial point. They're now allowed to go into sanctuary cities that before it was seen as a safe haven for a lot of immigrants, especially from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, such as New York and California. Now they're able to go into sanctuary cities. They're able to, ICE can go into sanctuary cities. They can go into churches. They can go into private institutions. And it's not just adults. You now have children who are targeted as well. And as my colleague said, the initial rhetoric was that, we're going to remove one of the people with criminal history or people who have previous removal orders. But no, we're seeing everybody is getting caught up in that web. And one of the biggest changes that I've noticed is the collaboration between state law enforcement agencies to assist ICE in executing searches and seizures and taking immigrants into custodies. So I definitely believe it is everything that Trump said he would do and more.
Is this, as we go to the break, Dr. Thiem, thank you for that, Siku, thank you, Opal, is this the aspect of Trump's second coming immigration that is most streamlined among all the other things he's done, which seems to be, I don't want to say heretic decisions, but just made on the fly? Is immigration the most ordered and structured of his big policies that he's executing second time around?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think it's probably a populist move, but Trump told us that he learned some things in the first administration. He also learned some things when he was not in power. And what he's doing is building on what he learned, putting loyalists in place, ensuring that government can work for him and that there are fewer and fewer obstacles to him achieving his goals. And he's been very, very deliberate about that.
Hear you on that. Intentional. This is Lead Story Prime, talking about Trump's second coming, what it means for the Caribbean, the broader argument concerning the fights, the battles that he has chosen to wage, the relationship with Canada, the relationship with China, the relationship with the EU, the relationship internally, the loyalists that he has littered across critical government institutions, and the way he's dead set on achieving his agenda without the help of Congress, which of course has been a crutch that many a U.S. president has leaned on. 142 executive orders proves that he ain't about committee, decision by committee. It's all about what he believes is best for the United States at this time as he implements his policy of America First. More on Lead Story Prime after these.
Hey you know all the people in your business? You should take advantage of CVM TV's unbeatable small business advertising package. Trust me.
And get your goods and services in front of your customers today.
For $150,000, you get a high-quality professional commercial.
Plus 20 prime-time commercial spots. That's massive exposure at a fraction of the cost.
Including on the #1 morning show in Jamaica, Sunrise.
So don't wait. Call us on 658-208-5377 and see your business goals happen right here on CVM Television.
Open a deposit account in the JN Bank Savings Streams promotion and save monthly for a chance to win an all-expenses-paid trip to Peru. Enter now. The time by JN Bank Savings Streams promotion is
8:30. In a world where innovation meets tradition, agriculture is evolving like never before. From the latest sustainable farming technologies to age-old practices passed down through generation, agriculture is
precious to me.
I love the animals. I don't mind getting my hands dirty. I love working.
Join us right here on CVM TV every Sunday during news at 7 as we explore the people, the science, and the breakthroughs that are shaping the way we grow, eat, and live. You don't want to miss it. This is Farming Forward.
Those who are informed and whose job it is to pronounce those opinions on the rest of us through the medium of television, they've said that Trump had a huge hand to play in Monday's federal elections in Canada. They speak of Trump having as much as a 30%, well, the swing from the Conservatives. Pierre Poilievre looked for 2 years. I was watching Prime Minister's Questions Weekly in Canada for much of that time, and he was absolutely wiping the floor with Justin Trudeau, hitched his bandwagon to Trump, and then Trump went rogue and wanted to make Canada the 51st state. And then suddenly association with Trump became almost like a poisoned chalice. He drank from it on Monday, Pierre Poilievre did, because the poor man even lost his seat as Mark Carney, the former central banker, led the Liberals to a victory that was not on the cards even 2 months ago. How quickly fortunes can change. And many people saw that election as Canada voting in the person they felt could stand up strongest to Trump in a bid to keep Canada's respect and dignity intact as a sovereign nation. Yeah? The temptation is there to go global with this conversation, but we have to keep it together and focus it on the people who are related to us and who depend on us and who we depend on in terms of the Jamaican diaspora. I have Opal Lee with me, I have Siku Clark with me, both immigration attorneys, and I have Dr. Maziki Thame with me here in studio. Siku, I wanted to just ask you this for the understanding of some members of my audience. I imagine that there are still some people who are not quite clear what the beef is with students in the U.S., people who hold student visas in the U.S. and this move against them. What is the move and what danger do they face at this particular time?
Okay, so what we saw over the last 6 weeks was the removal of 1,500 student visas, right? And initially, the mandate behind that was a concerted effort to target students who had some type of activist affiliation, right? So that's where the whole argument where student visas were being taken away. And then that then spiraled into students who had minimal criminal infractions. I mean like petty theft, things that didn't have any type of impact. But over the last 2 weeks, I would say that this was actually paused because it was deemed to be unconstitutional and they're targeting the wrong people. So as of right now, I don't see an issue with the student visas, but there's still a lot of hesitation and a lot of fear because, I mean, at the end of the day, 1,500 students lost their status. Some of them woke up to emails that they have 30 days to leave the country. Some of them, CVS was actually canceled. So I can just imagine the fear that they're going through. But as of right now, for lack of better terms, it is on pause so that they can come up with a better governance, a better process in terms of how they're going to evaluate students and how they maintain their eligibility in the U.S.
Thank you for that. Opal, there is some reports, well, there are reports that we're getting concerning people who would normally come and participate in the carnival revelry, which we saw climax on the weekend. Maybe I shouldn't use that C word, but anyway, yeah, there are many people who would have come who are students in the United States, but the word is, as the authorities report the number of cancellations they saw, that persons were saying, listen, I'm a student, I don't want to leave the United States, come to Jamaica, and then on my way back, I'm told that I can't come in because of the extension or the application of the Trump policies. Is this a real thing, and how would the authorities, the border officials, do that if you are legitimately in the United States and you haven't committed an infraction, even though you're the holder of a student visa?
Absolutely, because here's the thing. Even with student visas, with tourist visas, as you know, whenever you're re-entering the United States, Customs and Border Patrol, they have the ultimate power to go ahead and to see if basically you're knocking on the United States door, right? And they can decide whether or not to let you in. So even people who have the re-entry permits, for example, there is a disclosure on that form that basically states that, yes, even though you may have a re-entry approval, when you re-enter the United States, it's at the discretion of Customs and Border Patrol. So what we find is that a lot of our clients are choosing to err on the side of, caution and to just remain in the United States because they don't want to have to hire an attorney like myself or Mr. Clark when they're told that, you know what, your visa is canceled, or even though you have this re-entry permit, you're going to have to stay outside the United States, and then we battle it out. Their attorneys will have to battle it out. Most of the times, I believe that we'll be successful because a lot of things, as my colleague just says, it's been challenged because a lot of what we're seeing is happening. It's unconstitutional. And so I believe what President Trump is doing is pushing to see how far he can get away with. But as we see, a lot of these things are being reversed, thankfully, for, advocates and for, we have so many organizations that are looking out for the good of the people.
Thank you for that. Dr. Thame, the issue of labor and the disruption to the supply of labor that this application of the immigration policy is occasioning. We know that the administration usually takes a step back when the decisions are having an immediate economic impact, as with the tariffs we saw. So is the disruption to labor and the supply chains and everything else likely to see a relaxation of what is happening now where application of Trump's immigration policy is concerned in the States?
I mean, that's possible, right? It will depend on whether the idea that he has of what are quote-unquote American jobs are actually being, materialized. But I think we have to see even that in the context of the America that they want to create, the legacy of Trump into the future. And even in relation to the question of student visas, it's not just about the immigration issue. International students are attached to the reputation of universities. Mm-hmm. There is a sense that the university is an elite space. Working class Americans may never have access to the university. We know that Trump's base is a lot of that, alienated American that believes that America has gone to the immigrant, including as it relates to people's possibilities for social mobility through the university. Mm-hmm. So the attack on the student is also an attack on the university as an institution that is seen as elitist, anti-working class, and anti-MAGA, anti-Trump, essentially, insofar as it is seen as an oppositional space. Mm-hmm. So all of it is really meant to work together in order to create the possibilities for the American that presumably Trump is representing. Mm-hmm. Though we're also seeing that increasingly those Americans that voted for Trump with an idea of what it meant are questioning the policies that would lead to, for example, loss of protections for veterans or Medicaid, for instance. Mm-hmm. So that, again, it's difficult to say, even in terms of Trump's popularity, which is on the decline.
Tanking, yes.
How all of this will play out, but what they're trying to do is put in place institutional changes. So,
Yes.
for example, if you look at the Supreme Court
Yes.
and the conservative judges
Yes.
there, the kinds of decisions that would be taken in the courts would favor the Republican idea, the Project 2025 idea of what America should look like in the future.
Yeah, and on the point of Trump's popularity, Dr. Thame is dead right. The latest ABC News Ipsos poll that I read says that Trump's favorability rating is at 39% and his unfavorability rating is at 55%. And among MAGA supporters, even they are losing their enthusiasm for Donald J. Trump as his application of policies not in accordance with what they think or they thought he would have pursued when he was candidate Donald J. Trump, President Donald J. Trump 2.0, not quite delivering for them. Siku Clark, I ask you this one then. Based on your information, and you know, people would share certain things to you that I'm hoping you can transpose into public information while maintaining a client-attorney confidentiality. But this immigration thrust and the aggression with which ICE is doing its work to round up people who should not be in the United States. Has this caused displacement among Caribbean Jamaicans in the diaspora, or Caribbean people broadly? Are more people hiding out underground? Are some employers who had these people in their employ now forced to look for alternative supply of labor? What is that particular situation looking like as we look at Trump 100 days in?
Yes, absolutely, especially in the state of Florida, where just this past weekend, it's like over 750 people were detained just in one weekend from ICE. So what I've noticed from especially my clients, they are leaving the state of Florida, leaving the state of New York. They're afraid to go on the streets because now you have ICE agents in plain clothes, in unmarked vehicles approaching them. I don't even have, I also have clients who are fearful for even coming to my office for a consultation. So now we've had to do more virtual consultations, more phone consultations. People are afraid to go to work. So it's immense fear, especially amongst Jamaicans and the Caribbean diaspora, of just being outside, just going out to work, just living their daily life. And I mean, I can hear it in their voices. I can hear it when they actually do come to my office. Just the fear of being outside, and this even comes from green card holders who are here legally. They're calling and saying, Mr. Clark, can I travel? Can I go to another state? Because I had this record 25 years ago. And I said, absolutely, there is some level of risk. There is some level of concern because they are being affected as well. So anyone that isn't, I would say, a born U.S. citizen, I've noticed there is a level of fear and consequentially some type of displacement as well.
Yeah. Openly, the stress level must be high from your own experience. And I know that you've been a champion of using social media to reach your clients over time. Your WhatsApp line, I'm sure, is very busy. But have you experienced the same thing that Siku is encountering? People with high stress levels, high anxiety levels, wanting to stay underground, wanting almost as if they could be invisible as the ICE agents use increasingly inventive methods to infiltrate and find those who they feel should not be in the U.S. at this time.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, even U.S. citizens, not the one that were born there, the naturalized one, even them, they are fearful, right? They're saying, okay, is it okay? Can I still travel? And I'm like, yes, but here's the thing. It all depends because some people, as we know, there's a process called denaturalization. So if there's anything that you may have done in getting your permanent residence, so for example, if you had lied on your application or there was any fraud issues, you now run the risk that they may revisit that citizenship and it might be revoked. So a lot of people, they're fearful. And to echo what Attorney Clark just said, a lot of people don't even want to drive to come to the office. So we are having to do a lot of virtual as well. And, we are seeing a lot of separation of family. For example, if one family lives in New York,
hold that point,
like the spouse lives
hold
in
that
New
point for me on the separation of families. And let me take the break so we can take the time signal and come right back. This is Lead Story Prime.
Rise with sunrise. It's your midweek push. We start your day with Wednesday service, then it's all about Mentorship Day 2025. We'll head to the shelves in Sunrise Book Club and the fun wraps up in WAGs. Brought to you by True Pets. You've never seen a sunrise quite like this.
Protecting Jamaica's borders is a key priority for the Jamaica Customs Agency. The JCA will remain vigilant and resolute in effectively fulfilling this mandate. The time, brought to you by the Jamaica Customs Agency, is
8:45.
For all your electrical needs, visit ABC Electrical Sales. We've got everything, stocking top brands like CNCs, Philips, and Allen Bradley. We guarantee quality and reliability. Shop with us and save with even free island-wide delivery. Conditions apply. Visit us at Shop 8 Hagley Park Plaza, Kingston 10. Call 876-754-3714-5 or 876-754-3825-8. ABC Electrical Sales, for a better choice in electrical business.
Back with us on Lead Story, the dying embers of this conversation. We want to get some perspectives from Trinidad and Tobago before we go. But Opal, you were making the point that based on your experience, this Trump 2.0 and the application, the implementation of his immigration policy is having serious effects on family life.
Yes, for example, because everybody knows how strict Florida tend to be. So you may have a husband and wife who reside in Florida. Then you might see one person leave and go to New York, for example, who they deem to be safer. And because they don't want to run the risk of just being on the road and being taken up into custody in Florida. And so you will have one spouse living in New York because they deem it safer and they could get a job maybe easier there. And then the other one living in Florida, and they say, you know what, I will stay until we have, for example, the interview, or until I secure a green card or a work permit. And then I will take the chance to then travel back to Florida. And so we're seeing the instances of people doing the right thing by doing ICE check-in, and they're taken into custody. So it's just a fear. It's just very fearful, and it's they have all rights to be fearful because it is really, really happening. This is not something or a hoax or anything. It's real life situation.
Yeah. This is not a drill. Final words from you, Siku. So do you, from your perspective, see any moderation of what is happening now? I know you've pointed out that several moves that the administration wants to make on the immigration front have been stalled by decisions handed down by the courts. But do you see the clock ticking on this, or for the duration of the Trump presidency, immigrants will have to live on edge?
Absolutely. I think for the entire presidency, immigrants will live on the edge. But I would want to state that it depends on the type of immigrant, because even though I've seen the fear, I've seen the scrutiny that family immigration has come under, I've seen an uptick in Jamaicans getting approved for their business and investor visas out of the Jamaican consulate. So I've seen no problems with that side of immigration. But when it comes down to family base, I definitely see for the balance of the presidency that yes, there will be court challenges, right? For every executive order, for every legislative change that does occur, that it will be challenged in court. But to the lay person who has any type of immigration issue or that is an immigrant, they will continue to be on the edge because it is the unknown. Because, I mean, I even have a client that is a naturalized U.S. citizen that is re-entering the U.S. and got brought to secondary inspection, being asked questions about from when they were a student. So the fear will continue because of the unknown, even if a lot of the changes will be null and void.
Hear you on that. Opal, Siku, you're doing a tremendous service on behalf of our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, and may you be empowered to continue to doing so. A pleasure speaking with both of you this evening.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Excellent. Opal Lee and Siku Clark, immigration attorneys in the United States. Dr. Thame, last word from you. You said something to me which I found instructive because I was coming there. The fear factor stoked by this immigration policy and the implementation of same, and how that impregnates the kind of authoritarian regime that Trump appears hell-bent on establishing in the second run in the White House.
Yeah, there are threats to democracy in the U.S. currently. And I think the last point about the type of immigrant is also important because it's a racial question as well. Mm-hmm. There is a stigmatization of people from Latin America especially, but people from poor countries in general, mm-hmm. non-white mm-hmm. countries. So that, again, as it relates to how the Republican Party and the MAGA force imagines America mm-hmm. as white, there is, within that context, an attempt to shape the U.S. away from what it is currently. Even, Trump has referenced the 19th century, a period when people of African descent were enslaved, mm-hmm. as a good period in American history. There's a nostalgia mm-hmm. for white domination, mm-hmm. and that is connected to the threats to democracy and the ways in which Trump himself imagines mm-hmm. himself to be a sort of king figure, but also the ways in which they are using the powers of the executive in order to undermine the kinds of separation of powers and democratic ethos that we believed that, at least internally, America had some commitment to. Yeah, a Puritan agenda being pursued by Donald Trump, who they say is leading more monarchical than presidential in his second stint in the White House. Thank you, Dr. Thame, for your perspective all the time. All right, Trinidad and Tobago before we go now. So here's the thing. Trinidad and Tobago, yes, I'm referring to the election on Monday and the preliminary results that show that the UNC, the United National Congress, led by Kamala Persad-Bissessar at the ripe age of 73, still potent, still a force to be reckoned with, and she led the UNC to what on paper is a crushing win over Stuart Young / Dr. Keith Rowley's People's National Movement. I'm getting some perspectives from TNT this evening. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. Now that we're into the post-mortem period of the election on Monday, what are the key themes that the analysts are chewing over as we reflect on what happened on Monday?
One of the things, as everything happens, as you say post-mortem, you look at what is I don't want to say death, but it's definitely putting the PNM in the back foot. They're going to have to do a lot of recalibrating. A lot of people seem to be very upset with the way that Stuart Young would have been elevated to the position of Prime Minister. A lot of them felt that Dr. Rowley, when he stepped down, should have also stepped down as political leader, held an internal election, chosen that new political leader, and then let that person run the election campaign. That didn't happen. Dr. Rowley held on as political leader, and within the elected members of parliament, chose the next prime minister. And a lot of people seem to have rejected that, even though it was constitutional, everything was perfectly legal. It seems as though the PNM base didn't vote against them. That's important. They stayed away from the polls, and the UNC voters picked up the slack.
Keishan, some big-name casualties on Monday. I looked at my friend Shamfa Kojo, the Minister of Sport, gone. I looked at the Health Minister, Terence Dealsing, in St. Joseph, gone. I looked at some other big names who didn't cut the mustard on Monday. What do you think the electorate was sending, the message that they were sending by virtue of what they did in that polling booth on Monday?
Listen, in Trinidad, now I'll say off the bat, Shamfa Kojo was probably one of the biggest shocks for us in this election. We had Shamfa Kojo as safe, We had Tobago East as the one to look out for, and that went early. And when that went, that was the indication. Terrence Dialsing always had a rough patch against him, even though he was the Minister of Health, the one that guided us through the pandemic. Maybe that worked against him. But each time that he won, this would have been his fourth election. Each time that he won, the margin got smaller and smaller. And I think eventually we saw that they bit away at that lead. The UNC campaigned early. That was one of the first candidates that they named in this election, and Devish Maharaj went straight for the jugular.
Yeah.
The message is the Trinidad and Tobago doesn't always vote in someone. We vote people out, and the message was after 10 years in government, they want to change.
Yeah, you know, this may be uncomfortable for some, but as journalists, we have to go there. And what is true is that I read an op-ed earlier today from a former member of Kamla Prasad-Bissesar's previous cabinet in her first turn as Prime Minister, who said, listen, this woman was absent from many cabinet meetings. Her influence was minimalist at best. She did not lead. It was the finance minister who really led cabinet meetings, chaired cabinet meetings, and the Kamla Prasad-Bissesar, it was the essence of Kamla that was felt at the cabinet briefings and really in running government. Several years later, and now at this stage, if we are to believe that story, what are we to expect from Mrs. Prasad-Bissesar in this time?
Nothing that was said there was really shocking to anyone there. Anybody who lived in that era, like myself, that was my first dip into journalism. We all understood it. We are talking now about an era where we do expect assignments to run late. Mrs. Prasad-Bissesar was notoriously late to assignments. She would say come for 2 and wouldn't show up until like 4. So it is not incorrect, though, some of those statements. What we're looking at now is, honestly, it's a succession plan. I think a big part of Kamla Prasad-Bissesar's run this time was not unsimilar to Donald Trump's. I wanted to come back. I wanted to show you that I can. She managed to get people out of the party that would have challenged her, even in a victory, even in defeat. Somebody who might have challenged her and taken over leadership of the party, taken over opposition leader. She got rid of those people. And if you want to talk about the essence of Kamla, it's extremely strong. That is a powerful personality. That is, she poises herself as his mother, this woman who loves you and takes care of you. Every funeral, she's the one there. And this is, and she's taken that and guided herself back into another sweeping victories. It's one of the best political comebacks. Her margin of victory this time is 1 seat less than in 2010.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy reading your paper tomorrow morning along with the other big two, the Newsday and the Express. Here's the thing, the map we showed just now, the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, EBC, has upgraded it to 27 seats. And of course, we understand that the UNC is challenging the result in 3 other seats, Keishan. So they could end with 30. They could end with 30.
You look at that map there that you have up, and you look at to the south of the map, you see those 2 red dots. Those are PNM strongholds. Those we thought were safe. To see those flip and to see those flip to 2 Labour candidates, that's a very industrial area. A lot of people there complain, but there are no jobs, but they work in the oil and gas sector. And for those to flip to Labour, that sent a message. The other one is San Fernando East, that was held by Patrick Manning. That has never flipped. So if in that recount that flips, and that's held by his son at this time, Patrick Manning's son, if that flips, that would be wild. Nothing that we've ever seen.
We're getting the wrap-up signal, Keishan. Thank you very, very much. The one that struck me was point 14. I was floored when I saw that was gone. And I said, yeah, it really was a wipeout. Thank you for your time, man. We'll talk again.
I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Excellent. All right. Thanks to the production team for working late on this. Thanks to my producer. I'm out until tomorrow, hopefully.
let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville.